Indigenous people deserve more than what reconciliation is.
I stand before you today to offer an apology to former students of Indian residential schools.
I would definitely say that reconciliation is benefiting the government more than it is benefiting our people.
We said that Indigenous peoples must be respected.
All they want to do is say that they're doing reconciliation and doing these small, insignificant things to include us in the most minimal way so that we're just kind of seen. We're seen, but we're not heard.
I think the youth are really bringing up to the surface what really needs to happen. And it's time that the government, that these agencies listen to these young people because they're bringing a lot of wisdom. Tanse, my name is Jessica Slater. My Cree name is Wapske Pasqua Mestosasqueo, which means white buffalo woman.
Okay, Nidanako, Nancy Kapamatosi Maki. Hi, my name is Matthew Provost. My Blackfoot name is Two Smudge.
I'm Mace Loon. I'm originally from Palestine and I grew up in Jordan.
My mom is from Ochekwe-Sipi Cree Nation and my dad is English.
I'm from the Piikani Nation in the Blackfoot Confederacy, which is in southern Alberta.
We now have before us an opportunity to deliver true, meaningful, and lasting reconciliation between Canada and First Nations, the Métis Nation, and Inuit peoples.
When people talk about reconciliation, they're just directing it towards one single thing, and then that's what they're giving to the rest of Canada.
If you have someone that's done a crime against someone else, right? Before the victim, we'll call it, or whatever, is able to come to the table, they need to be able to heal.
Rather than talking about how, settler colonialism and colonial violence and gendered colonial violence is the problem, it has more so focused on framing in one way or another Indigenous people as being a problem.
The person that caused the harm needs to be accountable. So I'm not sure how the government can be accountable when they're still causing harm.
People get this stereotype kind of thing that we're asking for more. We're asking for things that aren't ours, when we're not asking for an apology. We're just kind of asking to be respected and heard. And I feel as though we don't even get that.
Strong families, strong communities, and vibrant cultures and traditions will contribute to a stronger Canada for all of us. God bless all of you. God bless our land.
Reconciliation itself is a Catholic process.
It comes from Catholicism.
So if we were really wanting to reconcile, I would think that they would try and do it through an Indigenous way.
Even in most of Indigenous languages, there's no word for reconciliation.
I think the overall sentiment of reconciliation is absolving or, some sort of moving on in a way. I think that, yes, it does focus on residential school, but colonization was so much more than that.
Until I know fluent Blackfoot, or until my kids will know fluent Blackfoot, then I don't even think reconciliation has anything to do with my history.
First Nations, Inuit, and Métis languages and cultural practices were prohibited.
There is a lack of knowledge about Indigenous peoples and Indigenous struggles and Indigenous sovereignties. And I think that is very much intentional in the way that we're taught in schools, the way how immigration to the colonial state is shaped and framed.
There's very little topics in the education system. We're not consulted when it comes to education and our own kids going to education. There's a lot of, I feel like education is just a vehicle that drives racism when it comes to Indigenous people. They're literally teaching racism.
Not honoring the treaty. So I had to apply for how many years? 3 years to get my education funded. And I had to do everything myself before that. And that's in our treaty. And so why isn't that being given to every Indigenous youth or young person that wants to go to university?
What about teachers who teach Indigenous students in the education system from kindergarten to high school, and those kids feel out of place?
And And I think because a lot of times there's an education about, all the injustices and ongoing genocides that are happening. So I think a lot of times people just get wrapped up into that facade without questioning it.
People who want to go see us in museums, like the Museum of Anthropology at UBC or at Glenbow Museum in Calgary, like just because we're an exhibit, that doesn't have to be your only connection to us, or learning about us isn't your only connection to us. You could have been building those relationships and not just stereotyping us and stigmatizing us, like just from what you've seen or heard, because like I feel like it's more than that.
We need to look at prevention, right? And we need to look at funding programs that are going to be preventative. And, like the federal government under Stephen Harper cut all Indigenous youth funding for urban centers. And if we've got 80% of our population living off reserve now, it's like, how are we supposed to be successful?
People think that we have all this money and we get all this funding, and it's like, well, if we had all this funding, then why do we have all these issues?
It has mainly centralized dominant narratives about Canada being a savior and Canada being this, white savior state.
Bias is now in the very fabric of our society. And we need to look at where this bias stems from. And I think that the government has done a really good job in, like I said, fostering these narratives that we get all this money, that we get everything for free, that we don't have to pay tax. It's really not true. And these misconceptions really cause a lot of harm.
Say Indigenous kids in the city don't even have enough resources to their own culture. They don't even know what nation they're from anymore. So I guess you can say that they're pretty much assimilated, and that's what Canada wanted. So they got what they wanted.
Two primary objectives of the residential school system were to remove and isolate children from the influence of their home, families, traditions, and cultures, and to assimilate them into the dominant culture.
How can we succeed in a society that doesn't even accept us?
This inferiority argument or whatever, we still see it. We still see it in so many different areas in our society.
These objectives were based on the assumption that Aboriginal cultures and spiritual beliefs were inferior and unequal.
But then what are the ongoing effects of residential school, including our overrepresentation of kids in care and in the judicial system? And we know that there's a pipeline now from being in government care to being homeless, right? So there's all these ongoing effects, and when you couple that with the microscope that Indigenous agencies get put under for delivering services, it really doesn't seem like they're trying to be conducive into solving this problem in a really tangible way.
It's like, this is what we're apologizing for, we apologize for it, this is what it's about, and then that kind of blinds everybody from what the real picture is, what people are dealing with, what these families are dealing with, what these kids are dealing with. Like, there's 9-year-olds who are committing suicide, but they don't talk about that. They don't even give out Amber Alerts when Indigenous kids go missing.
Indeed, some sought, as was infamously said, to kill the Indian in the child.
There's this Canada, this unified Canadian nation versus Indigenous people. And I think that's also like a strategic way to perpetuate this idea that Indigenous people are the problem.
Like the last residential school closed in like 1996, and people don't even know about that. Like, just talking about this dialogue and trying to bring up these issues is something that, like, it's more than reconciliation.
Create space for solidarity between immigrants, migrants, and Indigenous folks. And I think that could really be something that can be transformative and really go beyond the whole reconciliation facade.
I feel like we do need more. Like I said, like, we need more support. We need more than just reconciliation, but I'll support those who do think that that's enough.
The only time that we would see successful reconciliation if Indigenous people had our original, connection to the land and our original level of resources and ability to support ourselves.